Welcome to Hunting Home, the podcast where we dive into all things real estate, homeownership, and the people and stories that make a community. Whether you're buying, selling, investing, or just love talking about real estate, this is the place for you. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are my own and do not necessarily reflect those of any brokerage, company, or organization. This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered legal, financial, or real estate advice. Always consult with a professional before making any real estate decisions. Now, let's get into it.
It's another episode of Hunting Home with Mr. Blake Hunter, the realtor extraordinaire with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Always grateful when I get a chance to sit in on your podcast and talk with you, Blake, because I got a ton of questions about what's happening in the market right now. And you just recently were, you had access to a lot of information about what's going on.
Yeah, well, that is one of the better introductions on the podcast lately. So that's exciting. Yeah, my job is to inform and help people make confident decisions, in the real estate market, one of their biggest life decisions, financially. And so, my job is to know the facts. And I think in today's world, we get caught off on the wrong trail from big media. And I'm not trying to be, political when I say that. It's just the news is trying to sell news. And so sometimes you hear about foreclosures or a recession or all those things. And you're maybe in the market and you're like, man, is it the right time to buy? Is it the wrong time to buy? And I'm not going to sit here today and tell you that it's always, there's some people are like, it's always the right time to buy. Well, maybe in certain scenarios, but my message to people is it your time? Is this the right time for you and your family? And then how can I educate you to show you that it is or it's not? And so really all I wanted to do today was share some facts about the real estate market nationally and, locally here in Omaha and Council Bluffs, because that is what's important. You start talking about the news again and they're talking about, huge price decreases in markets that are not ours. And those markets that you're seeing the larger price drops are in markets that were super inflated, through 2020 to, early 2022. A lot of places where there's vacation rentals and those types of things that we're seeing way crazier things than we were seeing right here in the metro. So the nice thing about being in the Midwest is we don't reach the high highs and we don't see the low lows. We kind of just stay somewhat comfortable in the middle. So, kind of a couple things that I wanted to talk about were from some things that I learned earlier this week. Benchmark Mortgage put on they had a guest come in from Keeping Current Matters, and he was really good about painting the picture of what our local market looks like. And then I also pulled some statistics from our multiple listing service, both from our Omaha side and from our Council Bluffs side, and just going to kind of share with the listener, what's it look like out there? What can you expect if you were going to enter the market?
I recently had a conversation with the mayor of Council Bluffs about our specific area and what's happening with housing. And yeah, housing's tight. You can't even find rentals right now.
Yeah, and I'm sure one thing that he mentioned that I've heard him speak several times lately, as well as Brandon Garrett with the city, and they, Council Bluffs is at and I'm sure Omaha is going to be. I think it's actually the metro area when they share this statistic, but we're at a 1.4% vacancy rate, and they say that, a community starts to experience severe homelessness when you go below 8%.
Yeah.
And we've been below 8% since I think 2015 or 2016. And it's just slowly gone down. And, Brandon has said it a couple times in his presentation. He's like, 1.4% is basically zero.
Yeah.
So it's not just that people can't find their first, rental, as they graduate high school or whatever. It's the regular person that's renting can't even upgrade to find something with more space when you're talking the rental market. But then that also affects, just our overall housing market. and it pushes investors to buy properties because they know they can fill them.
Well, and with what the things that you're talking about and the way things used to be, we're all comparing, say, interest rates. We're all comparing that to what it was recently as opposed to what it's
Yeah.
been historically. And as I was talking with the mayor, I gave the current situation that we have going on now with a dozen eggs in the grocery store. Right now, if eggs dropped to $2.75 a dozen, there would be a run on that grocery store just like you used to see in the banks when they were shutting down.
Yep.
But you know, two or 3 years ago, $2.75, you wouldn't be able to sell a dozen eggs for that. So it's what we're used to. It's
Yep.
not specifically about, where should it be, or is it going to go back there again? And, that's just human nature. And as you said, it's your job to be able to navigate all of that and try to find the right situation for the right people that are your clients.
Yeah, I don't use the eggs analogy. I always use gas.
It's the same. Yeah, it's the
It's
same
like
thing. Yeah.
it's easy for people to relate to, and it's like one day, um, you're paying $2.75 for a gallon of gas, and then here we are. I think I paid like $3.70 or something the other day, and I'm kind of under the side of, well, what am I going to do? Walk? So I'm probably just going to fill it up. But it's like you get used to what you're seeing, and people got so used to those low interest rates that did affect our market because you had so many people refinance, and then now these people are locked into these low rates. Most people are aware of that situation. I'm not telling anybody anything new there, but they don't want to leave, and it's going to take a lot for them to leave because they're locked into that lower rate. And for them to be able to upgrade, they're going to pay more for the house just on the purchase price, and then their monthly payment's going to go way up, probably for sure double, if not triple in some cases, because of the higher interest rate. And one of the things that was brought up at that conference I was at earlier this week was, it seems like kind of a no-brainer when he said this, but he was talking about affordability. And affordability is, it's everything. It's what's controlling everybody in their decision making. But he goes, it breaks down into three things: price, so your purchase price; rates; and wages. And I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much straightforward. But when you break it down, you're able to see where we're kind of heading. And I think that that's a healthier place. Prices are, we were seeing 15 to 20% appreciation every year or on a yearly basis.
Yeah,
And
that was crazy.
yeah, it's crazy. And that's what allowed so many people to be able to bump up into their next purchase, because they all of a sudden became equity rich in their property because they're going up 20%, even 10% in a year that's a good return. And so they were able to even live in a house for like 2 years and turn around and make a pretty good chunk of money just by living in that house for 2 years. But what we're seeing now is that appreciation is kind of more forecasted to be somewhere between 2.5% and 3% this year, which is kind of more of a stable place. Now, it's still appreciation. That's what we want. That's the cool thing about real estate, besides all the other benefits, is hopefully that appreciates through time. But it's not going to be that crazy, 10, 20%. Rates, sure, we've been high. We've seen the biggest climb ever historically in a very short amount of time, and now things have been trending downward. I had a pre-approval come through 2 days ago. Is at 6.5%, and that was on a conventional mortgage with 5% down. So all of a sudden, if you're in the business like me every day, is I'm experiencing that eggs effect or that gasoline effect. Is like, oh, well, we were at 7.5% not that long ago, and then all of a sudden we're a whole percent down. And I think if we ever see, and I don't think they're going to change a lot this year. I mean, from everything that I listen to from the people that are really on the financial side, the forecast is we're probably going to stay somewhere between 6 and 6.5%, probably closer to that 6.5% through the year. But if we saw 5.99, I think that the psychology of people would just be like, now's the time. it's going to free people up to refinance that bought in the last 2 years that were maybe at 8% or greater. So it's going to free up a lot of money. It's going to free up people to make decisions, hopefully create some more inventory. And that kind of creates that healthier market that I've been talking about. And then that third aspect, which is arguably the most important part, is wages. Well, you can have great interest rates. You can have decent appreciation in property. But if you don't have the wages to support it, to buy the properties, it doesn't really help. And wages are kind of forecasted, and it looks like in the last few months are on the rise. And so if we can have all those three things kind of come together to meet some common ground, then that's when we'll return back to that healthier market like we saw pre-COVID, probably like the 2017, 2018 real estate market.
You've talked, I've heard you talk before about average time that a house is on the market and typically how many offers you get. It wasn't that long ago. I mean, it was now 2.5 years ago when I sold my house and had an open house and had 3 offers that weekend, and ended up taking one of them. And, as they say, Bob's your uncle. But it's not, it can vary now, can't it? As far as with houses are sitting a little bit longer than they used to on sometimes, but that also depends on the price point where you're at, because some of the houses that are down in the 150, 175 range, I don't think that's the case with those.
No, I mean, at the end of the day, it's sales. It's all about your product. And people that have a good product to bring to market experience the success. If it's a good product, if it's a good house and it's priced right, there's still a lot of scenarios out there where multiple offers are occurring, where you're getting above asking price. We, as agents in the market, even with buyers and sellers, is there's a lot of psychology involved in the whole thing, and a lot of people are caught up on, I'm listing my property for this X amount and I expect to get this much more. And that's not really how it always works. And then we also had a lot of people entering the market when things were really, really hot, where they were not what I would consider to be show ready. They're just plopping these things on the market. They know there's a huge need for them. They're not going to even clean. And we're back to a place now where, how do we make your home the most appealing that it can possibly be to ultimately get you the most money and the best terms? And so, yeah, you're right. You're seeing stuff across the board as far as multiple offer situations. You're seeing properties that are probably priced a little too high that are sitting on the market. I just looked, our average days on the market for February of 2025 in Council Bluffs was 28 days. And so you got to figure there's properties that are sitting on there for 90 days. So that factors into your average there. And then even properties that maybe have multiple offers on them, they may be leaving them on the market for 3 to 5 days to be able to build up, that to be able to review the offer. So that number can be skewed a little bit, but even 28 days, I mean, that's a strong seller's market. And if you look at the absorption rate, which shows us how long would it take for everything on the market to be gone, based off the statistics, we're under a month right now. So if no new listings came to the market, we would be out of places, technically speaking, we would be out of homes to sell in 1 month. And we don't really start seeing a flop over to a buyer's market till we're out like 90 days. So we're still well on the side of the seller's market. We're just seeing things stay on the market a little bit longer. There is the appearance of having more inventory because the houses are staying on the market longer, but we're not necessarily getting a lot more coming on the market, if that makes sense.
And also what I'm hearing is, if you can break through the psychological part of this to stop thinking of this as it almost it feels like gambling in a way. You're trying to anticipate what is coming and focus more on what's right for you, what's right for your family, and then work inside of that instead of, hey, if we wait another month or two, is this house going to be $1,500 less, or are we going to get another tenth of a point down on the interest rate or whatever? It's too difficult, I think, to accurately predict all of that.
It is, and I think just because of our recent market, it has people thinking about it differently. I think that the people that struggle with it are the ones that are really trying to push their limit. And so they're trying to get the most they can possibly afford. And so when you get to that point, it gets a little hairy because 0.5% could change the affordability factor for you. But if you're making an educated decision and you're buying a house that you plan to live in, for I'd say at least 3 years, which is pretty typical. I think the average has gone up now. It's like 12 or 13 years. Then you can sustain that 3% growth every year. You're paying down your mortgage. All in all, it's going to be a good decision for you. Where you get in trouble is you have somebody that's maxed out. They get their pre-approval letter and it's for $300,000. So they go find a $300,000 house. Their purchase price is $300,000 and they're maxed out on their affordability. Then all of a sudden the property taxes go up the following year. All of a sudden your homeowner's insurance goes up the following year. And then you find yourself in this position of, I don't know if I can afford this anymore. And you haven't seen the same appreciation that you saw like through COVID where you had 20% appreciation. You can turn around and make money and move on. You're seeing the regular side. And the other factor too is, I tell people all the time, people think you have to have 20% down to buy a house. Not the case. I think the average is down like 12%, something like that. The good thing about having the larger down payment is that you're always in a position of having equity, unless things go really backwards. And so you have somebody that, like I said, they're kind of maxed out on their purchase price. Their property taxes go up. Their insurance goes up. Their wages may stay the same. And they only have 5% equity in the property. And then they got to get to a place where they got to sell it. Well, now you have cost to sell it. And then all of a sudden you're upside down. It's like buying a new car and driving it off the lot. It's the same thing. I think if you can make a well-informed decision, you think about your finances, you think about kind of your wages trajectory, and you factor in for the price of property taxes, plan on them going up. Plan on your homeowner's insurance going up, especially, I got hammered this year. I know how it goes. You're going to get it again next year. So it's just, that's my job, and that was kind of the point of talking to you about recording this episode today was every person's situation's different. Every property is different. You could even talk about, hey, this person can afford this $300,000 house on this side of town or outside of city limits, but they can't afford it in this neighborhood over here because the property taxes are nearly twice as high. And, that's when you get into those people that are, hey, we're fluctuating on a couple $100 a month on this affordability factor. And then I think that's where you get into kind of some of those sticky situations. Thinking about buying or selling a home? I've got you covered. I've put together a free seller guide and buyer guide to help you navigate the process with confidence. Whether you're a first-time buyer or a seasoned homeowner, these guides are packed with tips, insights, and what to expect every step of the way. You can download them right now by clicking the link in my bio on Instagram or just reach out and I'll send them your way. While you're at it, be sure to follow me on social media and check out my website for more real estate tips and updates.
I think this information and we're talking about it in a larger form right now, as opposed to individually and tailoring it for, say, one of your clients or someone potentially your client. I think is a great example of something that, when I first started doing this kind of work and started learning from different people in real estate, something stuck with me that one person had said, that your job is not selling houses. It seems like it is, but that's not what it is. You can't just go into a house and you're selling that specific product. You're representing someone to make sure that they are getting, be able to make as much of an informed decision as they possibly can. That's your job. And I think that um, folks can sometimes forget about that they don't realize that that's really the industry that you're in.
Yeah, I mean, the actual properties themselves, and that's one thing they tell you from day one when you're working on getting your licenses. If you're getting into this business because you like houses, this is the wrong business. And it's weird. I've never really even thought about, like, sure, I get it. I like a cool property. I mean, who doesn't? But it doesn't really ever excite me that much. What excites me is like dealing with different people and watching them through kind of the decision making process. Some people need a ton of information. Some people don't need as much. Some people really need you to build the confidence in what they're doing. Some people kind of want to come to their own conclusions, And so I think my favorite part of the job is obviously the education and advising factor, but kind of mixed in with that is like when you meet someone, or even like friends and family that you think that you know very well, you go through this process with them and you can kind of see how their mind works, and you can see like what you're doing that really works and what you're doing that doesn't. And being able to get better at that, through time and like through different experiences, and not even really thinking about necessarily the deal at hand. I mean, it's one thing to negotiate, write the contract, and, do all those things, to make things work. But, the real success is like when you go through a transaction with somebody and they get to the other side and they feel really good about it, because there's always a little bit of buyer's remorse. People are always like, "Ooh, did I make the right decision?" But then you see them a year later, and they've been able to do, especially when they've been able to like really exceed in other places financially because they made a good decision with their real estate. I mean, that's kind of the name of the game. And uh, as I do this longer, I see where I really find, the pride and the fun part of this job.
I'm thinking then that it would probably make more sense. And this is going back to what you're saying with somebody maxing out what it is that would be at that very, very top end of their budget, that it would make more sense to back down off of that and then turn that property into what it is that they want. Now, obviously, it's a much bigger thing if it's size. I mean, size is a different thing. If you need the space, you need the space. But you can make upgrades, and then it is more as you can afford it, as opposed to, oh, we have this nut we have to hit every single month now. and there's too
Yeah.
many other things going on in the economy that we don't have control over that can change on us.
Yeah. I mean, certainly. I think the tough part for people in the market is understanding what they're getting for the money. And I think that the expectation, because we are so near to it, I mean, I just, well, like I said this morning, in the last 30 years, I'll have to pull it, don't mind me looking down here at all my million notes, but in the last 30 years, the average price of a home in Iowa has gone up 268%. In Omaha, so pretty hyper local, 295% appreciation in 30 years. So that's over 30 years. But I also looked at just the appreciation this is from Omaha, so the median closed price, sale price of existing homes, so not any new construction, this is existing homes, in 2015 was $145,000. In 2025, it's $280,000. So 2015, I mean, it is 10 years ago, but for some reason, when I think of 2015, I think it's like 4 years ago for some
I
reason.
know. Yeah.
That's not a very long time. I mean, that's most people when they, like that cycle, that 12-year cycle of people moving in, buying a house, moving in the next one. they bought their house and they kind of have an expectation. Maybe they see things on Zillow and they're like, okay, that's kind of what that's worth. And so what they think that they can go buy is not what they can actually go buy. And they may think, oh, I'm going to look at this $300,000 house, and in their mind, they're thinking of the $300,000 house from 2015. And at the time, you were doing pretty well. You had a $300,000 house in 2015. Now you get into, especially in the Omaha market, that is really starting to become almost your entry level home. 250,000. I mean, there's celebrity homes being built that are $500,000. And so, not that that makes it any better for anybody, but I think having a realistic expectation when you enter the market will help you kind of navigate, because I see a lot of times, and I've experienced this, a lot with my own clients, is it always takes a few generally of showings and going look at different properties to kind of set the bar and educate. So you almost know you're going to burn one or two showings because there's an expectation going in and it doesn't meet that expectation. Then you kind of go back, you recalibrate. And, there's some situations like, well, people, hey, I can actually afford to go another $25,000 higher. And that might get me into the next, notch. So there's so many moving parts. I mean, you talk about just that price increase in 10 years. But that's kind of my urgency with dealing with people today that are trying to time the market. Like you said, there's no crystal ball. It's so hard. I mean, there's no way to really time it. And you get people that sit on the fence, and then all of a sudden a year turns into 2 years, and 2 years turns into 3. And we've been renting now for 3 years when we probably could have bought a house. And, we've paid $1,500 a month for 36 months now, and that's gone. And we could have probably bought a house, and by this time we maybe had enough equity, we could have turned around, sold it, and bought the next thing up. And so that's my only urgency towards people, is the people that are in the right position that want to do it, and they're just they're worried because they don't have the facts. And so that's why I have the facts. I can show you, here's what the real estate market's done. This is what it's done for a long, long time outside of 10 years. And, does this correlate to like your life plan? Does this make sense to you? And if it does, then we can move forward.
I think that's just a ton of great information. And step number one with all of this is to sit down and talk to somebody, have the conversation, learn more about, because when you sit down and talk with someone that you haven't worked with before, there's going to be a lot of what you're saying that can be tailored directly to them, instead of we're speaking in a lot of general terms here. Everybody's situation is different. Everybody's what it is that they specifically need out of life right now is different. So get involved with it and get that conversation started. Again, I know that it's something that I've always appreciated about you, Blake, and it's why I've sent people to you, is you don't care if they're in the $150,000 range or if they're in the $500,000 range or wherever they might be at. You treat everybody just exactly the same, and I've always respected that about you. And that's what people need. That way, they know you're giving them the best advice that you can specifically for them.
Yeah. I mean, I do care. I appreciate you saying that. And I try to do that, with everything. The name of the whole success behind this business is serving people well and having them refer you. And so treating everyone respectfully is kind of the whole point. But yeah, I always encourage people to just reach out if they want to have a conversation. I think it's hard. Some people are like, I'm not quite ready. I don't want to have that conversation. I don't want a pushy salesperson telling me what I need to do and not do, blah, 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 blah. I'm probably the least pushy person. So I should probably be a little pushier sometimes. But I just encourage people to reach out if they want to have a conversation. I don't care if there's anything on the other side of it or not. I have people reach out about market analysis all the time. They're like, how much do you charge for that? I don't charge for that. If you, like, I had a gentleman call me the other day, they moved his father into an assisted living facility. They're not sure what they're going to do. There may be a family member that buys the property, but they need a market analysis because they have no idea where to start. That's something that I do. So if you need something like that, you want to have a conversation, you want to come into the office and talk about the process. I'll happily receive your phone call, message, whatever, and we'll set something up.
And at some point, we need to have a really long conversation about what the city's doing about inventory and the lack of homes for sale, the lack of rentals. It's just, as you said, with that percentage of vacancy being that low, it's a real issue, and it affects everything, not just housing. It goes into businesses and things like that, because there's no place for workers and employees to live and that kind of thing. So but we got folks actively working on it. So
yeah, there's a lot of good people working on it. I think things are moving in the right direction. My biggest concern is, just our community in general. It's just like business is like, if you're not growing, you're dying. And, one of the kind of shocking statistics to get kind of hyper local on Council Bluffs is that we have not grown for a long, long time. And in order to do so, we got to have jobs, and then we got to have the people, but then they got to have a place to live. And so, my livelihood depends on that. And I care about our community. So whether it's Omaha, it's Council Bluffs, this is a national problem. So I like talking about it, and reach out. We'll have that conversation at some point.
He is Blake Hunter, and this is the podcast Hunting Home. Always grateful when I get a chance to talk to you, Blake, and I'm looking forward to the next time.
Awesome. Thanks, Todd. Before you go, don't forget, I have a free buyer guide and seller guide available to help you make smart real estate decisions. You can grab yours through the link in my Instagram bio, or just send me a message and I'll get it to you. And if you're enjoying the podcast, I'd love for you to connect with me on social media and my website for even more real estate insights. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time on Hunting Home.